and call to order this meeting of the Community Preservation Committee at 5:32 p.m. on September 22nd, 2022. All members are currently present with the exception of Garth and John. And if they join in at some point, we'll note that in the minutes. So first on the agenda is approval of minutes for August 25th. Yep, August 25th, 2022.
I move that they be approved as written.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion that was seconded. Any further discussion on that?
Assuming the location has been changed.
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, with the location being changed. Hearing no other comments, we can vote on approving those minutes. All in favor of approval?
Aye.
All opposed?
Donna too.
Anyone abstaining? Okay. And that passes, and the minutes are approved. All right, so next on our agenda, we have a guest speaker, I guess, City of Greenfield grant writer Athena Lee Bradley on information on using CPC administrative funds for a historic inventory.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for having me on your meeting agenda. So I am the grant writer, and I am in the process of writing a letter of intent for a MHC survey and planning grant. And I'm working with Margot and the rest of the Historical Commission on the grant. The letter of intent isn't due until November 15th, 17th, I believe. They just issued the new grant guidelines. And so, but I'm here because I know your meeting is early, and and also the Historical Commission, I need to bring up to their meeting for discussion next in early October. When I originally approached, I wanted to originally apply for a CPC grant. And then I met with Christian, and he thought that it was not allowed under the CPC guidelines. And so that's why I came to you to see about potentially getting administrative funds from your all's budget, which I know is very limited. So as I said in my letter to you, my memo to you, just even an intent with some support and any kind of funding would be helpful. But Margot, and I'll let her speak in a minute, she believes that we could apply for CPC funding, and because she did some research on it. So now there is a question. And so I would open the floor to Margot to interject, and then also just to ask you all your opinion about the city applying for the CPC funds to do our historical survey update. The historical survey was originally done and completed in 1983. And in order to get additional MHC funding for any kind of historical renovations, we need to be able to get our survey done, or we do not qualify for MHC grants. Plus, it would be in the great interest of the city to get our survey updated and completed and much more comprehensive and to MHC and national new standards that are out there for historical surveys. And I know it is a priority of our Historical Commission as well. That's my spiel.
Okay. Yeah, Margot, if you want to go ahead.
Thanks for allowing me to speak and to be here. Yes, we enthusiastically endorse taking this step of updating the historic properties inventory for the city of Greenfield. 40 years have transpired since I helped put the inventory together of 400 properties. And certainly we need to reassess many aspects of the inventory. For example, that has very little about archaeology or Native American artifacts or sites. I mean, it just is deficient. And all the towns, cities and towns across the Commonwealth are updating their inventory because it's basically the table upon which you build your historic preservation plan, and then you can prioritize preservation projects. So it's of utmost importance to the commission. We think it's important to the city, and it really relates to the CPC because you're going to be deciding which preservation projects are worth supporting and funding. And so this is really, to us, a first step. It's kind of a little boring, but I looked on this CP Coalition website, and there's about, I mean, I stopped counting, but Concord and Belchertown and Deerfield and all these other towns have funded the historic survey update with project funds. So, I mean, I think it's an ideal project if we can get legal counsel to approve that your funding could go for it, because it is so overarching and important to the city. So
I was wondering if Christian could read what he, like, the basis that, he had for why.
Yeah, normally I look at the database like you did, Margot, but then I immediately found it what I thought was a pretty clear answer in the internal guideline released from the state, which says funding for an inventory of historic buildings within a municipality is not allowable as a CP project expenditure, as an inventory is not a historic resource under the CPA definition. However, preparing the inventory may be fundable in whole or in part under the CPC's administrative and operating budget if the inventory will assist the CPC in performing its duties, including reviewing the community's community preservation needs, possibilities, and resources. So I thought that was pretty clear, but then I looked at what you sent, and there seems to be exactly that funded under the historic category. So I don't know what the answer is.
yeah. And I mean, these are eminent towns, Concord and Cambridge and all. I don't think they would fund it without legal authorization. So at any rate, I don't want to mess up the discussion. I guess we just want to make it clear that we want to apply for some funding, whether it has to be just from administrative or if it could be from project funding.
Right.
would-
So
Did you have a-
perhaps
Yeah.
reaching out to MHC staff and asking them
Mhm.
avenue to do, and I'm happy to do that, or work with Christian to make sure that happens. And that would give us at least an answer, hopefully.
Yes, I
We've
think
got a
that
comment.
I've read that they say, discuss it with your legal counsel. I don't know. I think they kind of bounce it back, but we have the phone call set up for next Friday. So certainly we could talk to MHC, to
Yeah,
Jen
we need to
or
find
even-
out before next Friday though, because the CPC.
Oh, right.
application is
I
due
may
on
have an
Friday.
answer for you.
We might have an answer over here.
Great.
Oh.
Under the flow chart for qualifying historic projects for CPA funding, one of the questions is the project appropriating CPA funds for a building, structure, vessel, real property, document, or artifact? And if the answer is yes, and what I'm thinking is that this is a document. And
Yes.
therefore it might be possible to fund it under project funds. The question for me is, it's kind of going out of order of what we've been planning to do, because it's kind of, if we do it as a project fund, we're saying, everybody else, they're jumping the line here, I guess, is what I'm saying. So, but that's what it says.
Yeah.
But what I'm not sure is, do they mean a document that is itself an historical
I
document?
think that's what that means.
You think that that's what that means? Okay, okay. In which
I think
case
it's open to interpretation. I think there's some room for interpretation there.
Well,
Yeah, go
would
ahead.
this be a Stewart question?
Yeah, I mean, this could be something that we could, I mean, it doesn't hurt to apply for CPA funding, do a pre-application, and then we could look into it more and we could contact the Community Preservation Coalition, try to get some updates on that. I
Okay,
mean, if the answer is no, then, then it goes back to the administrative.
okay.
But then there would be like an actual distinction. I don't know, Tom, did you have something you wanted to add?
Well, again, just want to be sure, at least this has got to be like last resort funding. So have you checked to see if there can be an appropriation within the planning and development department for this inventory? Is there a fund or is there an appropriation that can be made by council before you come here?
Well, what we need is our matching funds. So it's a 50-50 match, reimbursable match grant.
Right.
So the entire project will probably be, for this round anyway, 25 to 30,000. The way the city budget is, I would say there are no existing funds for it. But so we can at least whittle it down with any of your administration funds, or if I applied for the CPA grant and we were awarded it, that would at least help for a match.
Yeah.
And then the other important thing for this is to gather citywide support, like other citizens committees such as yours is really important for this grant because it is highly competitive.
Yeah.
So the more, at least for intent and matching funds and volunteer, because we talked to the historical commission, they're going to volunteer as a soft match, but that can only be a quarter of the funding for the soft match part. And certainly I will talk with the mayor about getting other funds from, like even MJ with CPCDP funds and any planning department funds. But I do know this funding is limited.
Yes, Susan.
on your timeline, do you need a statement that says that, yes, you're applying? Do you need a statement that says the money's in hand? What do you need? And what is the timeline for that?
So the timeline isn't until November 17th. So
Right,
I
that's
want-
still outside of our process. That's what I'm trying to figure out. What do you need?
Yes.
On November 17th, what do you need?
Isn't that
a
the letter
of
yeah.
support that, well, actually for the letter of intent, all I need is to cite where I'm getting matching funds. And then also in the narrative, I would put, we have support from the CPC and the Historical Commission, and we're getting soft match or hard match from. So just a
Do you
statement
have-
for that.
Do you have to have a commitment, or do you have to have something which says that you are applying?
Our date is November 30th.
Mm. I think we say
Yeah,
we're applying
They
because
were
it's a
going to
letter of
apply
intent.
for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry,
I
Margo.
don't
Yes.
think we need definitive.
Okay.
commitment.
No, because I don't want to jump ahead of the other grants because I'm sure they're all very important and I know you all will have a good choice. But when I first sent you the document that I sent you for to be on your agenda, I didn't think we could apply. So that was the question at this point is, can we apply? And so if you think it's okay if we apply, then we'll go ahead and do that. And that will be in our letter of intent that we've applied for this.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's totally fine to do a pre-application and then it's up to us at that point to decide whether you can qualify for a full application or not,
Okay, super.
which it sounds like we may need to look into more.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll do that then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much. Bye-bye.
See you guys.
All right.
Bye.
So, next on our agenda, we've got old business, review CPC timeline. I don't think we have anything, Christian, for that, right? Okay, outreach strategy, I think that's just a standing. thing on the agenda. CPC plan draft, incorporating public feedback from public hearing written comments. Do we have?
So the plan right now is I was talking to Kimberly. She, for our next meeting, which I think we're going to have the extra meeting at the beginning of October, she'll have all of the feedback organized for that one so everyone can just review it. And then from there, if there's anything that needs to be added to the plan, that could be discussed. So,
Okay,
for next meeting.
okay, that sounds good. I was hoping to get to pre-applications as soon as possible because I'm not sure how long it's going to take to discuss them. And then we'll know for our next meeting too. So that'll be kind of good. All right. So then next on the agenda is applications / pre-applications, which at this point is pre-applications. Pre-application review for eligibility. The first one, I believe these are in alphabetical order, is clinical support options. And all of the committee members should have a copy of that in front of them, or have it digitally on the Google Drive if you're remote. Yeah, okay. So this one, I'm not sure the best. Anyone have any suggestions on the best way to present these going forward, or?
Do we have the
Yeah, do
applicant?
we have someone here?
Bill Miller, and
Have Bill just present with the
Okay,
ideas.
yeah, Bill, if you want to, or someone, if you want to just,
I can go ahead and introduce the project.
Yeah.
And if there's specific questions for Bill, he can jump in.
Alyssa, do you want to come to the table? Otherwise, I can't hear you.
and then maybe introduce yourself.
Hi. Hi, so Alyssa LaRose, I've met all of you in the past. I work with the Regional Housing Authority and Rural Development, Inc. We are development consultants with CSO on this project. CSO is the lead applicant and kind of sponsor for this project. So just a little bit of background on how this project came about. Both RDI and CSO were contacted back in, I think, February by MJ Adams about the site, which is at 60 Wells Street, which is the current shelter for Greenfield, and whether or not we thought there was any opportunity to add housing at this location. This is something that the city and other local service agencies and advocates have been trying to look at for a long time. We saw an opportunity there. And so since March, I believe, we've been working together on this project. We've now engaged Jones Whitsitt Architects as the architects for the project. Are based in Greenfield, as well as Berkshire Design Group. The concept is to completely rehabilitate the existing building that's at 60 Wells Street. It's a 2-story building with a 1-story kind of section as well. Increase the amount of shelter beds that are on site, right, from 30 to 40. There would be men's and women's shelter beds. Create a kind of cafeteria area and kitchen that could also serve as overflow shelter. Add a new housing resource center with staff offices, a nurse office, rooms for consults, so that it's really a 24/7 resource service. Services provided 24/7 on site. I should mention that CSO has applied for the shelter contract for Greenfield. They were the only applicant. We're still waiting to hear on, the response from the state on that. But the idea is that they would own and operate both the housing at the site and the shelter, which would create a lot of efficiencies and really robust services for both the folks who are living in the studio apartments as well as the folks who are living in the shelter. And so the idea would be to add 36 units, 12 in the second floor of the existing building, and then a new building to the rear of the parcel, which would include the other 24. There'd be 2 elevators. And then we also are looking to acquire the 46 Wall Street parcel, which abuts it, and right now is a vacant warehouse. And so the idea would be to remove the warehouse and have this really nice access point coming from Main Street onto the site, create kind of a courtyard area for people to hang out in, and really kind of create this kind of resource center for people, as well as housing.
I think Tom might have a question.
Couple of questions. We're looking to see, I'm meeting actually with Gina on Monday to see how we might be able to take some of our, I don't want to say excess, but currently unused vouchers and project base them to help this out.
Yep.
I'm not sure we're going to be able to do that, but we're working on that. We have to change our whole plan and all kinds of things, but.
Thank you, Tom.
Who is going to be providing these services during the day? Who's providing the housing services? Who's providing the outreach services to the other human service organizations throughout the area?
Sure. Bill, did you hear that? Do you want to take that question?
Yeah, hi, everybody. Sorry to not be there in person, but I appreciate the technology that allows me to come in this way. I'm not sure I understand all of the question, but CSO under my direct supervision will be providing the services to the housing. And as Alyssa mentioned, also in the shelter is our expectation. We're in negotiations with the state about that currently, but what was the idea, Tom?
Well, I guess the question, do you want either RHI or Greenfield to provide technical support for people transitioning perhaps from this into more permanent housing? Do you want us down there 1 day a week? Are you going to do it yourself? You're going to contract with Franklin Regional to put a staffer down there, or are you going to do it internally?
Well, I mean, we're certainly open to different kinds of partnerships, but we're also experienced in managing housing of that type. And you know, I think maybe the kind of inside baseball in this is for other folks is that, so it's 36 units. These are apartments that people will have that are subsidized. And frankly, they can live there long-term. They can, I mean, it's permanent supportive housing.
Permanent housing.
Permanent housing.
So where it can be helpful is if people maybe stabilize and are able to move out to less supportive housing, they can access a mobile voucher like what you're talking about, Tom, and move to another location if they want to, which does a couple of things. It frees up a unit so we can move somebody else who's homeless into that unit. And then it, you know, gives that person the sort of freedom to move on with their lives, which is always great.
And this is kind of work out of the box, but I've got a captive audience here. We're going to be adding more services at the Winslow. Okay, we're working with DPH right now to do that. There may be a way to partner up too on that, where we may not have a full caseload. I'm sorry, it's work related. We should probably connect after.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's kind of funny because we're just getting rolling with some more outreach. So I know that Gina's already talked with you, Tom, and we've talked with some other key stakeholders in the area. But, you know, we're leading up to a presentation to the planning board later in October and an application to the state for funding at the end of October. And between now and then, we'll be talking with many other stakeholders and partners about this project. So
is there a dollar value that I'm missing on this?
you didn't put one in because it wasn't
required.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess just to bring us back to what we're doing tonight. No, that's okay. It's good that we can network and figure things out. Oh, Donna's got a question before I get into that.
Thank you.
You're muted. Yep.
So, can you hear me?
Yep.
So when I looked at this application, I thought that it fit, you know, in the parameters of housing And that, it's clearly marked the creation. It's obviously part of a larger project. So I guess my question, which I think you partially answered, is about how are you going to compartmentalize CPC funding to remain within that creation space that is approved for these funds?
Sure.
Well,
So,
You want me to grab that, Alyssa? Sorry.
sure, go for it.
Okay. So there's probably going to be between 10 and 12 different sources in the project, if not more. And so, just depending on what the requirements of that particular funding is, most of those will be coming from the state, but in a package. And so some of those funds can only do one thing, some can only do another. So it's an accounting process that's typical in a project like this.
Yeah, and my understanding too is if we were awarded funds through the CPC, that we would have a grant agreement with you that would outline what we can use those funds for. And so we would just be tracking that and making sure they are used for the right uses.
Yeah, and so basically what I was gonna say was that, essentially tonight we're just, we just have to decide whether this is an allowable project or not. And the requirements that I am aware of is, it has to be either acquiring, creating, preserving, or supporting, and this is creating. It can't be rehabilitating or restoring unless the property was acquired or created with CPA funds to begin with. So that's why it has the creation, I would assume. And then also it has to be for people with less than 100% area medium in.
Yeah, that's not an issue here at all.
I'm just saying, just to be clear, that this is for less than 30%.
So I have a question, since it has to be created, new stuff has to be, to use this money, it's got to be creation. But we can't be the sole funder on creation of housing, correct? That's not a requirement.
Right.
I don't think it's a requirement.
No.
Yeah.
No, it's very rare that.
Yeah, no, there'd be no way you could afford to do it. That's right. Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah.
You need to vote?
I guess we could vote. Basically, we're deciding whether they're going to be applying or not. So I think it makes sense just to.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So will we just say, yes, go ahead and apply, or will we give any leads on any additional information?
Well, I think we could say if there was something ambiguous and we wanted to say yes, you can apply for this, but it would only work if you did it this way. I think that's fine to say, saying specifically yes, this has to be used for creation and.
Yeah, I'm just thinking it seems to me that in our grant itself, that we actually ask, well, tell me if this is right. My memory says that we kind of ask who else is going to be pitching in on this or, and I wonder if that's information that would be helpful for them to know that we're going to be asking about.
Well, I think that'd be in the application.
Okay, got it.
So I think those questions are in the application.
Okay.
So we were just saying, yes, you can do a full application.
And the state asked the same thing, and so they want to know that the city of Greenfield is kind of contributing in the other direction. So that's one reason we're asking you. The vast majority of the money will be coming from the state.
And like Bill is saying, DHCD, which is the main entity at the state that we're applying to, these are competitive funds. And so they want to know that the community is supportive of the project. And so that's one way that communities, typically CPA funds are used often for affordable housing to show that support.
Yes.
Yeah, I just have one question. What's the rough time frame for the project?
Very rough. So we're applying for funding this fall. It's good timing in terms of there's the ARPA money available. And so this is really great that this is coming to fruition now. We hope to hear from the state in February. We know that your time frame is a little different. That's okay. In terms of finalizing kind of all the financing and the closing, maybe by summer. But it's all still very up in the air. And hopefully with construction starting sometime next year to get this going in the construction for, roughly 12 months.
Cool.
Yep.
Yeah, we should probably get together and compare notes on what funding we're going after this round.
Sure.
Because I hate to have us butt heads, one agency with another for the same purpose, so.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'd like to move that we suggest that they continue moving forward on a full application for this.
Okay,
Second.
all right, we have a motion seconded. Any other discussion on that motion? Okay, all in favor of this project being allowed to submit a full application? All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, Garth is here. Garth, I didn't see you there. All right, no, that was unanimous, so that passes unanimously. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, great.
So you can submit a full application and we'll look forward to seeing.
Okay.
Okay, Christian, I don't know if at some point when you do the minutes, if you could just note when Garth got here.
Yes.
Writing right now, okay. All right, so the next pre-application is Franklin County Agricultural Society.
Boy, I'm gonna be.
Yeah, introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Good evening. So my name is Michael Nelson. I'm the president of the Franklin County Agricultural Society, which owns the Franklin County Fairgrounds. This is Dylan, my number one assistant, also known as my supervisor, who makes sure I do everything the right way.
Exactly.
So thank you for having us this evening. So if you've been up to the fairgrounds in the recent months, you'll see that we are undergoing a major renaissance. The fairgrounds has had various skill levels of leadership in the previous years. Prior to myself, I've been on the board for about 16 years now. Took over as president in late 2019. And had the opportunity to navigate the fairgrounds through the COVID times, which was, of course, challenging and unique for all of us. So during the COVID times, we had the opportunity to really revise our strategic plan of how the fairgrounds ran. Previously, my colleagues who were in charge of the fairgrounds generally were older retired folks, which is great. They did a great job running the facility. I came into it with a business background. I have a master's and MBA in business administration with strategic planning and marketing. I should note that myself, including all my staff, are all volunteers. We do this all for fun in our free time. Dylan and I actually just came from mowing the lawn up there. So we all kind of pitch in and do our part. Yes, on Papa's lawnmower. So we all pitch in and do our part. But during 2020, when we kind of had that opportunity to fully sit down and revisit everything, we did. And we came up with a full new strategic plan of revitalizing the fairgrounds, revitalizing how we operate. Previously, the fairgrounds was really just a place where the fair occurred and maybe an offshoot event or so. Now we have events there every single weekend from the 1st of April through the end of October. I believe last count, I think it was 55 events took place there in 2022 compared to 7 in 2019 pre-COVID. And our 2023 calendar is actually completely booked with the exception of one weekend. The fairgrounds has definitely become the place that people want to come and have their events and participate. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Thank you. It's become the place where people want to come and support the community and be part of all the exciting things taking place in Greenfield. So in just the past 15 months, we've put over $800,000 in infrastructure improvements into the fairgrounds. About half of that is grant funding via matching grants that we've received through various state agencies. Those include stabilization of the mudslide emergency that we had. That was about $300,000. We just put $200,000 into replacing all of our outdoor LED lighting and replacing telephone poles. Come to find out, when we were replacing the rotting telephone poles, they were actually installed in 1924. So they had lived their life, and we could tell when we were looking at them. So we put in 64 new telephone poles, all new wiring, and all new LED fixtures, all new RV hookups. So now when we have all these events like Green River Fest come that have all these outside people who want to camp, they can now plug into electricity and stay right here in Greenfield, as opposed to going to Red Roof Inn in Deerfield and getting them a hotel or such. So we're able to keep folks here with that. And that was about 200,000. And then the third major project we did was a full ADA paving project, where we put in all new pavement all throughout the fairgrounds, including building new ADA ramps to all the buildings. Previously, the buildings were accessible through mud and trenches and grass, and it was challenging for an able-bodied person, never mind a person with disabilities, to access. So that was a $250,000 project that we just completed as well. And if you had the opportunity to come to the fair a couple weeks ago, you probably saw how different the place looks just in the past year or so. So we're spending money like crazy, but definitely getting major returns on investment as a result of doing so. Our mission as a society is to promote agriculture in the community, and to host community events and to continue to preserve the fairgrounds. The first Franklin County Fair took place right here outside the town hall in 1850. It lasted about 8-9 years here, out here on the town common before it outgrew itself, and everybody was like, wow, we got to find a permanent home. So it actually bounced around a few places down around the Green River, but it ultimately in 1865 settled up at the fairgrounds. The entire purpose of the fair is, like I said, to promote agriculture. That's why the fair was first held in 1850. So the purpose of the grant proposal before you this evening, in this pre-application phase, is to continue to preserve the agricultural nature of the fairgrounds. We have several barns, the cattle and sheep barns, that are relatively new in quotes, compared to some of the fairgrounds built in the 70s, but are definitely reaching the latter stages of their lifespan. We've had the opportunity to do some structural work on them as far as the posts and beams. But what we're looking to do is to stabilize the roofing on them. The roofs on them are, and I wish I had some photos to show you, but I'll certainly include those in the application process should we get that far. The roofs have gotten to a point of extreme rust. They are starting to get pin-sized holes in them. So when we have events at the fairgrounds like the fair, the animals are constantly just getting dripped on and getting wet, which they don't really like so much. So the purpose of the application is not to actually replace the roof, which would be a significant investment in the several $100,000 range, but instead to put a rubber membrane on the roof, which will prolong the life of the roof by a couple decades. The best guess is about 20 years. So that'll stop. The contractor would remove the rust, and then put on the membrane, which would actually fill in all the holes, stop the rusting, and also make the roofs look much more beautiful than they do right now with all the rust. Thank you, Dylan, I appreciate it. So our request before you is to do those repairs on the roof, not the replacement, but the repairs, which will get us a couple more decades of life out of them, and be able to preserve that portion of the fairgrounds for the many more years to come. That certainly is the backbone of the fairgrounds. As I mentioned, that's where the fair started initially, was with agriculture, and continues. And so we're just looking for funds to continue to preserve those buildings for the many years to come.
All right.
And sorry, and I should note also, the fairgrounds is listed on both the state and national registries of historic places. And the roundhouse and the front towers are also additionally listed on the national registries. So certainly a place that many people have great admiration for and excited to continue to preserve for many years.
All right. Someone has,
That went just, go Dave.
go ahead.
Yes, sir.
Part of my question was the extent to which the fairgrounds are listed under for historical purposes. But these buildings that we're talking about are not. And what I'm wondering is whether they are included in the umbrella of the fairgrounds.
Yes, they are.
They are, so
Yep.
they are considered to be historical.
Yes, yep, exactly. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so I guess one thing I'll add is I went and I like downloaded the sheet from the National Register of Historic Places. And it does list, so, you know, it has the fairgrounds listed, and then it has like all of the buildings and everything that's there. And then there's a column for whether it's contributing or non-contributing to the historic nature, I guess, of the fairgrounds. So there are some, there's a sheep barn. See, there has these names, and I'm not sure which
Sure.
ones are in the application.
Yep.
There is a sheep barn circa 1985 that
Yep.
says not contributing.
Okay.
And then there's an old sheep barn 1950 contributing. And then cow stall building 1, 2, and 3 are all contributing. So my understanding, I think, is that if a project was funded for, you know, the historic preservation for CPA funds, I think it would have to be one of those contributing
Yes.
buildings.
And in this case, it is. Yeah. The building that was in 1985 has shingle roofs on it. It is in good shape.
That's
yeah. So the 4 buildings in discussion are the contributing ones you just referenced.
Okay, Tom.
Yep.
Skunk at the garden party, okay?
Okay.
This, to me, it doesn't sound like a rehabilitation. It sounds like a maintenance issue. It doesn't sound like a rehab. I've read it. And it sounds like it's roof maintenance. Putting a membrane roof on an historic building probably doesn't do a lot to keep its historic integrity. But since these were in the 70s, you know, it's not like you're going, I don't see, and I can be convinced otherwise, please, and I don't mean to be the skunk. But this does not sound like a rehab project to me. It sounds like a maintenance project to me.
Just so you know, we can't fund maintenance.
Yeah, understood. Yep.
So it is that question of, is this a rehabilitation project? And so I think part of the argument would be that you need to prove that to us.
Okay.
Okay, as part of this process.
Yeah, and so one thing I can add is that for rehabilitation, there's a quote on the Community Preservation Coalition website that says it has to be capital improvements or making of extraordinary repairs to historic resources. And generally, when that's done, it has to meet the standards for rehabilitation by the Secretary of Interior for historic properties. And so I know on here it has preservation and rehabilitation / restoration, both checked. But I think it might qualify for preservation because preservation, my understanding for CPA projects, preservation is that you're preventing degradation that would result in it not being able to be used for what it's supposed to be used for.
Yeah, but I think preservation and I may be wrong, but in the context that I've worked with it has been if there is old documents that need to be preserved and you have to have somebody come in, or if there, we did a lot of document preservation by putting them on microfiche. We did a painting that needed to be done over. It was a 1600s. You know, we rescued that. I don't, and maybe it is, but it doesn't ring true to me that this would be preservation.
Donna?
Yeah, Donna and then Garth. Oh, Donna's good. Garth?
Yeah, I would sort of just echo what Susan said, that right, it's this sort of project is going to be kind of on the borderline, and you know, I think the application is going to have to show that, you know, definitely fits into the, these categories, sort of list, and obviously you can apply, or, I guess we vote whether you get to apply or not, but, I'd be happy with saying you could apply. If something's borderline, I think we would be, more likely to prioritize something else, unless you make a really good case in your application, and that's what the application's for. So it's, it's not saying we'll just shoot it down. But I just think that ends up, sounds like that would end up being the key thing is showing that this is in fact historic preservation items.
Oh, sorry. You go first.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the historic preservation thing on the CPA. And what it talks about is if it's determined by the local historic commission to be significant in the history, archaeology, architecture, or culture of the city or town. And I think there are ways, certainly, that the fairgrounds fits that category. I think what you have to show us in order for this to fit is that fixing these roofs in the way that you're doing so does that. And that's the question. That's where the borderline stuff.
Well, and for that, it either has to be what you just said, either the historical commission has to determine that, or it has to be on the state register.
Right.
And it is on the state register.
Right, but what I'm saying is the argument is, why does making these roofs whole contribute to the history, archaeology, architecture, or culture of the city or town? And I think that's the kind of thing that is what we need to look at in order to make this connect with the rules that we've got.
Sure. Okay. And if I could just read two more things real quick. One is in the text of the CPA law for the definition of preservation, it says protection of personal or real property from injury, harm, or destruction. And then there's a technical assistance that I was looking at when we were looking at the housing one. It says, can CPA fund work on existing affordable housing? And so this is for housing, but I think it applies for historic too. It says the determining factor is if the work can best be described as preservation, which is allowable, or rehabilitation, which is generally not, but that's for housing. It says for a project to qualify as preservation, it must protect real property such as a building from injury, harm, or destruction. Making such a determination can be a challenge. So I think if the argument is
right.
So they even have that written there. Then
if this, this wouldn't be like a full historic rehabilitation and restoration. It doesn't sound like you're not restoring it to its historic property or whatever, its historic nature. But to me, it sounds like it would qualify as preservation because the point is that you're protecting it from injury, harm, or destruction, right?
So,
Tom, I think, oh yeah, go ahead, Westy.
I read through that long thing about historic stuff, and there was such extreme detail on, back to the original, the original moldings, the original this, the original that.
And I think that just to butt in, I think that falls under rehabilitation and restoration. It is like extremely detailed for rehabilitation and restoration, but if this is a preservation project, I think that can be different.
So, and I'm just thinking of the pictures that it showed too. So I'm just not sure, thinking about the buildings and thinking about the roof and all, rubberized, patching the holes, all that makes such eminent sense, but I'm not sure how that fits in with the historic thing is all.
Well, if the building is historic itself, which it would have to be one of the, what was the word? Contributing buildings on the National Register of Historic Places thing, then that building, I think, counts as being historic.
So, which would be absolutely fine with me, and I love the food.
Thank you.
Could we just, on numerous of these things, at least on our first run throughs, check with Stuart so we start to really get clear, on what those rules are?
Tom, did you want to add anything?
No, I'm having a hard time coming around on this one. I apologize.
No, I appreciate you bringing up that question because that allows us to have that conversation, figure out a way to justify it. As opposed to being 6 months in and then going, uh-oh.
I'm sorry, I don't see preservation. I know what it says.
Yeah.
But it's not, you wouldn't put, if this was a home, a historic home, you wouldn't be putting a metal roof on it to preserve it. And to put a membrane roof, it's not ringing right, and I can be convinced otherwise.
I guess to me, the difference would be if it was like a home that was actively leaking into the building and you could do like something to preserve it so that it could still be used as a home, you know. But it wouldn't be a full, you know.
But it's the exterior of the building too. Which is a big thing with historic preservation, what you do with the exterior. I can be convinced, I can, I just.
You've got a preview of the argument.
I'm trying,
Which I'm excited, I'm thrilled that we're having this, so that I can kind of figure out how we're gonna move this forward.
Right, so I think if you can, I would suggest looking at the law and the information that's available to you, and then thinking through how this fits in with that. And is the membrane roof the best way to go, considering what you want to do here? And if not, is there something else you can do that would be more fitting in with the rehabilitation of those roofs?
Sure.
So there are a lot of different ways you can go, but I think that this is the argument that we're going to have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Giannis?
Yeah, where does the like funding for ordinary maintenance and repairs come from for these buildings right now?
So everything's based on operational expenses, based on funds we make via the fair and off-site events and any sort of grant funding we receive.
Got it.
Anna, did you have a question still? Your hand's up. I just didn't know if that was still up or up again. Okay.
I would like to make a motion that we suggest that this go through as to the next stage, and that, we'll see where it goes.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion to allow a full application for this project that was seconded. Any other discussion needed to make a decision on that one? All right, we will vote on the motion. All in favor?
All right.
Okay, and that is unanimous then. So.
Great. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate the very open and honest conversation. That's very helpful for coming up with our thoughts of how we're going to do this. So thank you.
Yeah, I hope you can make it work, because everybody loves the place, so.
We do too. It's a labor of love for sure.
And he obviously has to help him.
He has his rubber boots because
All right.
he goes to daycare, he comes home from daycare, we go to the fair, and he stops there.
And he's already there.
Already.
And I just want to express my thanks to you and your volunteers.
Absolutely.
Yes,
For all the hard
absolutely.
work to make this kind of the gem of Franklin.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
I know it doesn't happen by itself.
We've come a long way. Like I said, we've put about 800,000 in just in the past 14 months, which is incredible that we've been able to get that sort of match. About half of it has been matching funding. And then the other 400,000, we've either taken out some loans or used our operating expenses, which you had asked about, to contribute towards it. So we're really excited. There's a lot of great energy going on up there. And I mean, we have a great new partnership with the city. We work with Christian and MJ and the mayor's office a lot now, which my predecessors didn't really do a lot of. The fairgrounds was kind of like that thing up on the hill nobody thought about until the fair. And now we've really had the opportunity to kind of bring it more into the city of Greenfield. So
Making it a 4-seat all-year resort.
Yeah.
That's a great thing.
Yeah, we're very excited about it. Thank you all. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
All right, so our last pre-application for the night is. Oh, we got one more?
I got two.
You got two?
I think the pickleball one maybe didn't make the
I
cutoff.
think that one didn't make the agenda.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was like cranked up.
Oh, sorry. Greenfield Tennis Association, and Recreation Department.
Christie's here.
I see Christie's here, yeah.
And Rick.
Hi, I'm Rick
Oh, yeah.
Miner. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can hear
Okay,
you.
good. Brian Lamore, he's the one that filled out the application, but he was unable to make it this evening. So I'm here in his place.
All right, thanks. If you could, yeah, just kind of briefly describe what the project is.
Sure. Down at the Highland Park by the tennis courts, there's a water fountain that doesn't work anymore. I know that the people that play tennis use it, people that are going out for walks use it, people that are walking their dogs use it, people that are riding their bikes use it, and they all come down to press the button to drink the water, and it just does not work. There is a new water fountain, maybe 6 years old, I think maybe, down at the Davis Street courts, that you can press the button and drink water that way, or you could put a bottle on the shelf and press a button, and then you can get water that way. And I think that's the way that people are going now, just to stay healthy. So we're looking to have a new water fountain put down there.
So it's really the replacement of an existing non-functioning unit that was a functioning unit at one time
Yes,
that the city installed.
I don't know. I'm guessing.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they must have, yeah.
Yeah,
And it's specifically at the tennis courts?
it's right on the side of the tennis courts, but there's a section where people walk down the grass, where people can park and they walk down the grass and the ponds down there. And people walk their dogs down there all the time. People riding their bikes. I see people out there with blankets on the grass, having like a picnic sometimes down there. So it's used like what I said, people playing tennis, people biking, people walking, people hiking, and so on.
Couple more questions if I could. Will this include a repiping from wherever the source is to the new area? So there'll be a new T connection off of the water line coming into the park?
Rick, I can take this if you'd like.
Sure, go ahead.
So, hi, everyone. I'm Christy Moore, the Recreation Director for the city. That is true. Brian and I have spoken. I've been in touch with engineering, and the existing line that's there was put in the 80s, and it does need to be replaced and upgraded. So I'm working with Brian on getting prices. Obviously, for the full application, it's about 220 feet. The curb box was replaced in 1990 because there was a leak. So that has been replaced. So there's some maintenance that has been done. I didn't realize until Rick just shared that it wasn't working at all. Brian hadn't shared that with me.
Well, there's just this little trickle coming out, but it's not, you'd have to put your mouth on it to drink it. No one ever drinks it that way. So.
Yeah, well, obviously with COVID, I'm hoping people aren't doing that. But with our plan for the city, as Rick had shared, is that all of our public fountains are refill fountains now, so that we have less plastic waste, we hope, as well.
My last question. Why would you be asking the CPC to do a capital project that should be funded by the city?
Well, that's a good question. Like, as I said, we're slowly replacing them. We still need money to replace some additional ones in town. And Brian suggested this, and obviously he moved forward and jumped right on it. I think he was the first one to inquire and contact me for sure.
Will the city be contributing money to this as well?
I cannot answer that at this point. Obviously, we haven't started our capital budgets yet, but our capital expenses typically have to be over 20 or 25,000. We haven't received the guidelines yet this year from finance.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm wondering if this is specifically for the tennis courts, Or is it for general use people? And partly what I'm thinking is that tennis court area doesn't seem to me to be as high traffic as some other placements. You know, like if you really want a lot of hikers or a lot of dog walkers to be at the tennis courts, does not necessarily seem to be the place to put it.
So
Well,
that's
that
where
water-
the,
Go ahead,
sorry,
Chrissy.
Rick, that's the only place at Highland where there is existing piping
Like-
for a water fountain.
Yeah.
I think Garth has a question.
Yeah, I guess just sort of a couple of comments. I mean, it would seem like it would be for everyone, you know, obviously it would be outside of the fencing. And, you know, I would say the majority of the people enter Highland Park going by there, you know, so the placement of the current one is a little like over the hill on the backside of the tennis court. Doesn't seem super convenient for everyone. And I guess my one other thought is it's really a shame we couldn't have leaned on JS Ray and Berkshire Gas, who are going to be ripping up that entire stretch of stuff. If they didn't do it today in the rainstorm, we'll be doing it tomorrow and all the next 2 weeks. And, you know, we've already paid gazillion dollars to, you know, to fund all the Berkshire Gas stuff so that they can continue to not give us any gas. It'd really be nice if the town could have lean on them to, you know, put in a couple facilities while they're ripping stuff up, because it seems like otherwise we're gonna if it got funded via us or via general capital, we're gonna have to go back there, you know, dig it all up back to source again next year.
Well, in an ideal world, Garth, communication and planning would always be the case, but in a municipal setting, it's a slow process. I will tell you that the Sanderson Street project, I did push for that. So the fountain along Sanderson Street, hopefully that water line did get replaced because they're on that section now. So we can have an upgrade there. So that is my goal. It just doesn't always communication. Like I said, they don't always meet.
It's a challenge.
Yeah.
So I have some comments specifically about what was checked on the pre-application. So for program area, it has open space, historic preservation, and recreation. And I guess I just wanted to point out that I don't think it qualifies for open space because it would have to be, you know, like preserving new open space or doing some rehabilitation on open space that was purchased with CPA funds. So I don't think open space applies to this. And for historic preservation, if you were, you know, if this fountain was historic and you were restoring it to its like historic glory, then I think that might count. But if it's just being replaced and it's not historic to begin with, I don't think that one would apply. I do think recreation applies. I'm just saying for like, you know, for a full application, I think the open space and historic, I don't, if anyone disagrees with me, but I think that's my understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just think Brian wasn't sure what to check off.
Yeah. And then,
But we just need to make it historic. You got to put like some sort of Italian plaza fountain with like statues.
Well, maybe you could take the old one that was at Shattuck Park and get that repiped. That used to, years ago, they used to spit water all the time.
and then the other thing is project purpose. Creation is checked. And I think probably rehabilitation would be more accurate because for rehabilitation on recreation land, the CPA law says capital improvements to the land or facilities thereon which make the land or related facilities more functional for the intended recreational use. And so I think that would be, because we're not actually creating new recreation land. This is something that is helping the recreation land be used for its intended purpose, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna vote no.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would just really, like, I've never seen that drinking fountain there, so. Like, if your intention is really to serve all those people you mentioned, I would like it to be far more visible and usable and, make it be a place. But otherwise, it seems to me that it's really to serve these people.
And when we look at, when we look at creation, so many different perspectives, but when we look at creation, I think of the creation of a new inclusive playground, the creation of something that we don't have. I agree with you. This would probably be more rehabilitation.
Right.
But it's also, if they're going to pull the water pipe out, they're starting from scratch. So I don't know. I just think that the city needs to tell us they don't have any money to do this in their capital before we start. We shouldn't be the sole source.
Yeah.
And it does, if I can speak, Travis, it doesn't mean that, either DPW or the GTA Association or somebody can make some sort of donation towards this. These fountains are not cheap. And as far as the location, we certainly can talk with DPW. Obviously, I'm guessing it's probably in the 50s this fountain was put in. And at the time it was where the water line was. We actually found a water line that I think went to the pond while we were doing research. It was interesting. So we certainly can look at a relocation, which would be a shorter line, but we just need to talk with DPW as far as, plowing and all that kind of stuff, that we get it in the right spot.
Is there an estimated cost at this point?
I have not called about the piping because I wasn't sure if it was going to qualify and move forward.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was thinking of the timing of the process here. These funds probably wouldn't become available to you until midsummer anyway.
Right.
Am I right? Am I right on that?
Yeah.
You're gonna have a lot of thirsty tennis players out there. And is that suitable? Is that agreeable with you to wait that length of time?
Well, I know right now people are bringing their own water, but I also see people going over there to refill their bottles, and they just can't refill it. So they do without, and they learn to bring 2 bottles of water next time. So even if you had to wait until next summer, that's fine.
Well, there's no way that, the fountain could be like, I don't know, 8 to 10 weeks out. And obviously we need to coordinate. I'm not sure DPW is ready and willing at this point with winter coming to do any project right away. So it's typical for a project as small as this to take, 10 to 12 months.
Yep.
One other thing, if by chance it turns out that you cannot do it you can't move the fountain to a more visible place, then signage might be a way to go in conjunction with this. So that there's something on the tennis court wall which says, water that way or something like that. So, but the idea would be to make it more visible in general, I think. Yeah. I personally, there are already, in truth, bad feelings about that fancy court being there. And I think that it's important, it would really be valuable to let that be so obvious to everybody who you're saying use it. And I just would vote for it right away if it was like a location that would be really usable for everybody and visible to everybody, so it didn't look like it was just those tennis people.
Yeah. But again, I would say that would be us voting on a full application.
Right.
Not voting on whether.
Well, I want them to hear that.
Yeah, well, that's.
So that
yeah.
when they put in an application, so they're thoughtful about that.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's like, dude, why didn't you tell us?
Well, yeah, right. You're gonna want to know what a cost estimate is, and we want to know who the partners are. I don't think the CPC should be the only funder of this.
Well, and yeah, and again, that's where, right now, we're just deciding if the CPC.
I'm not even sure, I still don't think.
And yeah, I guess I'm Yeah, did you want to say something?
Well, it just seems like, yeah, if it's recreation and rehabilitation, restoration, that it seems to me that it is fundable. Yeah, and then there's some thoughts or concerns about the type of application, but that's sort of not something that we're deciding right now.
I had that quote about rehabilitation and I went to find like the full thing and it's where it defines rehabilitation in CPA law. And I think it's the part that was added to let cities rehabilitate existing parks. The full thing says rehabilitation shall include the replacement of playground equipment and other capital improvements to the land or facilities thereon, which make the land or related facilities more functional for the intended recreational use. So that to me, I feel like it falls into that category where you're rehabilitating an existing recreational facility.
Yeah, I'm a hard no.
Okay. You don't think it qualifies for that?
Not in its, no. I think it needs more work before it comes back here for an application. Yeah, I don't think as it's presented, it meets that. I don't think, I'm not going to vote for it.
Well, I guess I'm curious what it would need to qualify.
Yeah.
I will say I did look in the database and I found other projects where they were putting in drinking fountains.
But it was probably combined with something else.
Let me.
The city has had a water fountain up there since the 60s, 70s. I mean, it was, I know the 60s because, and the city has let the water fountain deteriorate to the point where it needs replacement. I'm not sure it's the CPC's responsibility to maintain things that haven't been maintained properly before. I don't think that's what we're here for.
Donna?
Oh, yeah, Donna.
Yeah, so that's certainly true, but also, I mean, we're at the point where we're asking people whether or not, we're telling people whether or not they should even go forward. Like we're not making determinations tonight about what we're going to fund. So, I mean, I think that the feedback that they're getting is very helpful. But I also think that, they need to come up with a proposal, and that's where we see whether or not it fits, I mean, there are a lot of other things that will need to be considered with this, not just whether or not people need water, so I'm in favor of letting it move forward and seeing where it, where the chips fall.
And I guess I would say, to me, it seems like obviously, yes, the city could have maintained it better, but to me, this project isn't for maintenance costs. It's like a capital project for, a new.
Or something that's been let deteriorate by the entity that put it in.
Yeah. So anyway, the one project I was looking at before was, this award will allow for the restoration of flowing water to 3 drinking fountains that are located within 3 Olmsted designated parks. That was like the whole project was restoration of flowing water to 3 drinking fountains. So.
Yeah.
And I just want to emphasize, it's not like we're just changing the faucet head. We are improving the fountain to be more environmentally sound so that you can fill water bottles.
Yeah.
And I think that Wisty's comment about moving it closer to the road certainly makes sense. Like we can look at replacing, but obviously there are a ton. If you look at my personal department capital plan, it's like 60 to 70 million alone just for my projects. The city cannot afford to do everything in a capital expense line for my little department, which gets very little money when you compare me to police, fire, and DPW. So any way that we can improve the facilities that the city has with different funding is how I get projects done. And Brian and Rick brought this forward because you asked for community members to submit applications. So I am here to support them in this project, and I would appreciate your support.
And I would just
Um,
add that it's neither here nor there whether or not it was the city's job. I mean, it is what it is. And I don't think that somebody should be penalized because the city didn't maintain something.
I disagree.
Okay, that's fine. I would like to propose that this project move forward. And with the understanding of what the discussion has been.
Yeah. Second.
Okay. Any further discussion on that? I guess one thing I just wanted to add was that with city projects, we have to be sure that we're not replacing funding that the city would be using anyway for certain projects. So I think in a full application, that would need to be made clear how this funding isn't supplanting existing operating funds by the city. I just wanted to add that.
Yeah.
Any other discussion on this? Okay, we'll vote on the motion to allow this project to move forward with the full application. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Anyone abstaining? I think that was everybody. Okay, so that moves forward. How many was that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7 for, and 1 against. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Christie?
I just have a question, Travis or Christian, will you email comments back to Brian so he knows what he needs to change?
Oh, yeah, the boxes he checked.
Yeah,
Yep, we'll send that info back to him.
perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So, we have no more pre-applications to review tonight, although I will say we have gotten a number of them in since this agenda was made. So I think there are going to be at least 4 or 5, I think, that we have so far.
Additional,
yeah. So anyway, other business, choose additional meeting date in early October if needed. And that was if we had any more pre-applications to review. And we do.
yeah.
And we said we didn't want to make them wait until the end of October to review them. So.
You said 5 more?
Well, so far.
At least.
So far.
I'm just looking at the clock. It's been at least 15, 20 minutes per application.
Mm-hmm.
So 5 would be an hour and 40 minutes.
We could try to be a little more succinct too, and kind of stick more to whether it's allowable or not.
Right.
And
Yeah, I think that's key.
I do wonder if we could be clear with each other about like the kind of feedback that we're giving them. Because, you know, like in both this discussion and the agriculture discussion particularly, the feedback I think was really good so that they kind of had a sense of how they could, you know, adjust some stuff. And that maybe they hadn't considered yet, but so I would just like to know what kind of feedback we're giving, because I can keep my mouth shut if it's like that's irrelevant. I'm happy to keep my mouth shut. But if it is that we're trying to let them, you know, have some hints on what they might do to change things.
yeah.
I think maybe what we could do going forward is to be really explicit and separate the conversation into maybe 5 minutes of discussion. Is this fundable or not? Is this like something you can apply? And then 5 minutes of feedback from the committee. Because I'm sure that people want the feedback.
Yeah.
And we owe it to them when they're here to say, you know, not have to say like, hey, come back in a month for us to tell you what we think. I don't know.
So I just want to ask them, this is just so that I am a better functioning group member. Is it appropriate to say like, for me, it would be important that you make, I'm going to use the drinking fountain as an example. For me, it would be important to make it really more visible so that if you're saying that all these people are using it, so they really can see it, period.
Yeah.
I mean, is that information that's helpful or not really? And you guys can.
I think it is.
No, I think it's something.
I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but in some ways, what we're saying is, if I were to vote positively on this, this is a question that I would need answered, and that's what you're really saying. Okay.
And there will be time like during like the full application, like once they submit a full application, there can be some back and forth and tweaking projects there too.
Right.
But I think it's good to, get the big things ahead of time. Donna?
Aren't we going to be providing more feedback than what's, in the meeting? Like, aren't these people going to be getting our feedback in response to their pre-applications?
I don't know if we've set up a process for sending more feedback.
No.
They'll get the minutes.
Yeah, they should be understanding what they're hearing here and send them the minutes, I guess. That'd be all right. Would that be okay with you, Christian?
The public document.
Well, I know they're public. I'm just, instead of making people ask for them, we can send them out to them. That's all.
Yeah.
But I like the idea of the, 5 minutes, like, is this eligible? And then does anybody have specific questions or feedback?
Yeah, that makes.
I think that works. I think.
It's like a good way to, as you said, kind of make sure it's separate, like, yes, you can do that. And then like 2/3 of the committee is, yeah, but I really don't like it because of X, Y, and Z. That's going to be useful feedback. It's like, send it in, but these are going to be the catches for you.
Yep.
And don't we also need to think about how long, like, if we say, we give you 3 minutes or 5 minutes to present? I mean, because we want to hear from them first, and then it's, is it? Because I think that things could have, if we put a time limit on it and let people know that in advance, things might have gone more quickly. We got a lot of background information that wasn't necessary, I think.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I was kind of glad that we only had 3 tonight so we could kind of like see how it goes and
massage it, right?
Figure it out for the future. So, yeah, I think for the next meeting, once we know how many we're going to have, we can, divvy up the time and I know Christian was sending emails to people to invite them to the meeting. So maybe in that email, we could say, you'll have 3 minutes to present your project and then we'll discuss it for 5, like.
Yeah, just do an elevator pitch and.
Yeah, elevator pitch. So anyway, we need to schedule a meeting. So our next scheduled meeting isn't until October 27th. Do we want to do like 2 weeks from today, which would be 6th?
I cannot make the 6th.
Okay.
Is the 13th possible? So that would be like that'd be 3 now, but 2 weeks before the final meeting.
That works for me.
That would be too.
Yeah, that'd be all right.
Yeah.
Would not work for anyone, the 13th at 5:30 to 7?
I think it's okay. I think it's okay too.
Is there any other specific town meeting at that time?
Oh, yeah. If we need this room or the John's on.
Yeah, and we could move somewhere else if we need to.
We could meet at the Housing Authority. I've got a room there. Although I don't know if I have.
Oh, yeah.
I don't have taping capability. I have Zoom capability, but.
There's a tree hearing in here at 4. I don't know how long that is gonna take. That's all I see for October 13th here.
It doesn't have an end time on it?
No. Yeah, well, it says.
Probably not an hour and a half for the tree. Hard saying, but.
Picturing like one of those little ear horns going up to a tree.
Well, we could tentatively schedule that and then maybe Christian, if you could just like send that, whoever that is, an email maybe and.
It's a tree hearing?
What's that?
It's a tree hearing?
That's what it says. It's just reserved already.
That could be, if it's contentious, taking down of a tree, it can go for a while. So,
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah.
Well, we can find another location if we need to, or we could be totally
We
remote.
could actually meet at Oak Courts too, which is an easier in, if you needed to.
Or we could,
I don't have the
yeah.
big screen, but.
So I guess one thing to ask right now for everyone is if we can't meet here and we can't meet at John's On, where we would also have somewhat capabilities like this, would people prefer to meet all in person or all virtually?
I can hook up the TV at the courts. It just isn't this big. That's all.
And we'd have like a microphone
And a camera.
Yeah.
That's Sanderson Street. Some meetings are held at Sanderson Street.
Yeah,
They don't have the zooming.
They don't have.
don't have that either, yeah.
I think with having the additional members of the public joining because of all the applications, I think it's wise to at least have Zoom. They're all on Zoom or hybrid, not only in person.
All right, let me just ask one other question, and that is, I'm looking at the city calendar, and there are no meetings scheduled for the 5th, which is a Wednesday.
I can do that.
Second.
Good. Garth, you good with the 5th?
Wednesday, October 5th.
5th I could probably do that.
It is Yom Kippur, just to be
Is it
simple.
Yom Kippur that day? Oh, then forget that.
Okay, the 5th is off.
Okay.
So we're back to the 13th?
Yeah.
I'm fine if we do virtual on the 13th.
Okay.
Okay.
I say let's do the 13th and
Okay.
we'll figure out the details of where we're gonna be, I guess.
Okay, so I want to
The
say.
tree hearing shouldn't last that long.
I wouldn't think.
So if first, I want to know who's going to create the format so that we have for sure format. And then who's going to be kind of timekeeper? I mean, I think we should really be serious about this.
Yeah. I can, I kind of roughly did that for tonight, like the times to start.
I know, and that was great.
But then it was good. It seemed like we were gonna finish on time, so I wasn't that strict about it.
One of us can do it on a phone
Yeah.
and just,
Yeah, and you do such a good job of having looked stuff up that I would hate to have you be timekeeper.
Yeah, oh, no.
And all that. It's like, no.
No. I mean, someone else should be doing
You
it.
need someone to be the jerk. I'm more than happy to be.
Okay, so we'll meet on the 13th. We'll see about meeting in this room or John's On or, other options.
Yeah.
And if we can't, we'll be all virtual. Okay.
Okay.
Does that sound good, everybody?
Yeah.
That sounds great.
All right, so our next meeting on our agenda, it says that it's October 27th, but really it's going to be the 13th.
And then it will also be the 27th.
And then also on the 27th, which at that point,
Talk about that.
Each other.
finalizing the plan.
You know what? I think-
Finalize the plan.
I think an assessment of how the two times went,
Yeah.
thinking if that, having some time in between would be helpful. Because if we're looking at this as a process,
Yeah.
then we can say, okay, next time, we will do it this way.
Or I was gonna say, if we get like 10 pre-applications on the last day, we might not fit them all in on the 13th. So we might
That's right, that's
we
true.
might need to, and if they're applying on the last day, I don't think they can complain if we talk about it on October 27th.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Yep.
I think we'll have something to talk about. Oh, Christy?
I just have a question in regards to I have 5 that you guys are receiving from people who obviously need community partners, which all falls on these shoulders, as you guys
Yeah.
know. So the water fountain that I just had to speak about because I'm the town entity. Are you expecting the applicant and me to talk about every single one of these?
For the you mean for pre-application specifically?
Yes.
Okay, I think the person applying doesn't even have to be here if they don't want to. I don't think you have to present anything. Because we have the pre-application and I could read what the project description is, and then we can talk about it and then we can vote. So if you don't have time to be here for all of those, I don't think you have to. I think once we get to the application process, there'll definitely need to be, people at meetings and talking back and forth and things like that.
Right, because there's obviously some that me personally and my department and the commission support maybe a little bit heavier than others, but this is a pre-application. So this is like everybody who has ideas is sending stuff to you guys.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like the water fountain.
Yeah. So, yeah, Donna, if you have-
Is the review criteria available anywhere online? Because I'm looking at the city's website and I'm on our page, but I don't see anything. I've got the application instructions, pre-app, full app, and complete packet, but nowhere do we have like the criteria, like this is what we're going to be really looking at and judging on. And I think that that's really important for people.
And we do have
We do
criteria.
have criteria, so we
Yeah, we
can,
just don't have it public. I think that that would like,
okay.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
we got that.
It's
Garth,
part
go
of the
ahead.
plan. The criteria is listed in the plan.
I didn't see it anywhere either, and we talked a lot about it at the rec commission.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, Christian can post that, like with the other application materials, just like, you know, CPC's review criteria for projects. I think it makes sense to have it on there.
yeah.
Like,
Okay, I just want to point out it's 7:03 right now. so in case anyone-
I do want to ask them, Christy, don't hang up. I just, you know, like Christy and Donna, though Donna's a member here, like it would be so good to get feedback from people who have experienced us because we've never done this before. So if there were, if you had any feedback for how we could be better, I would really like to hear it from them. You know, so I would really appreciate that.
Well,
Not
I think,
right now, not like right now, because
oh, well, I was just gonna give you briefly if you wanted to hear it, but if you don't, that's fine.
Yeah. Well, I think we're over our time right now, but I think this can be like later on in the process, you know, when we like review the previous year, and I think we can ask people who applied for feedback on the application process, and I think it might make more sense then. So I don't know.
Or we can adjourn and you can just say briefly. Necessarily, yeah.
I just think my comment about the pre-application review, that if you guys all do your homework and look at them ahead of time and have your opinions and your thoughts and your questions prepared, I think
Yeah.
it's gonna go faster because you guys are gonna have a lot. Like I said, I already have 5 on my desk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For those
Good,
people
that's good help, that's helpful.
a final application, they would need to get sign off from the controlling entity, which I believe is the rec department. So to some degree, you have veto power over any of those.
That's true.
No, it's true. Like,
Yeah.
if you say, what, these are all great ideas, but these are the ones we really want to push forward with this year, and these are the only ones that our department has the capacity to help support make happen, you know, that's completely valid, right? Because, you know, somebody wants a pickleball court, somebody wants a water fountain, somebody wants all these things, like, right, as you said, that's a lot on a rec department of very teeny, with not a lot of extra time and budget. So if you're like, oh, we're gonna put, you know, we're interested in pushing on this one, we appreciate your interest, you know, if you want to come to this, or you want to like help out the rec department in general by, you know, joining the rec commission or talking about the city budget, or when we come up to the capital plans, you know, that'll help things move along in general. But, you know, I do think like as the department sort of co-signer, you really get to say,
Okay.
which
Garth?
ones you want to really support.
Garth, I think some people have to leave, so I think we should probably adjourn for now. And
So I shall move that we adjourn.
all right, all in favor of adjourning?
All in favor.
All right. All right.